Hey Paul, how you doing?
Yeah, good, good. Thanks, Michael. Hi. Well, welcome to the coaching table, the place where business minds come to grow, challenge, and evolve.
We're your hosts, Paul and Michael, and we're so glad you're here. Whether you're leading a team or building a business or just curious about how great companies run, this channel's for you.
Every business, no matter the size or the industry, is built on seven key disciplines. These are the
Yep.
strategic functions that keep things moving, growing, and thriving.
Yeah, that's right. Whether they be leadership, management, operations, sales, marketing, human resources, and, well, accounting and finance.
Each week, we're going to dive into one of these disciplines. We'll explore the challenges, the strategies, the mindset shifts, and most importantly, how to apply them in the real world.
Yep, this isn't theory for theory's sake. We're coaches. We're here to help you think differently, act smarter, and lead with intention. So let's dive in.
Great
Well,
stuff.
as this being our very first episode of the coaching table, what better way to start than business startup? What we're going to talk about today is three pathways to starting a business, the pros and cons of each, key startup and considerations, business planning essentials, and obviously who to seek advice from. There's going to be certain people that you want to get advice from, and maybe not get some advice from others. So let's talk about all of those.
Okay, so let's start by looking at starting up the business from scratch. And obviously here, a lot of people have an idea, they have a career that they've decided to go along. They've worked for somebody else, and they want to take it a bit further, and that gives them creative freedom, gives them control of their business. But of course, along with that comes risks and a longer sort of gestation period to making the success of the business. I think the other thing, of course, is that uh, they've got to learn how to run a business alongside actually knowing how to do the business. Um, it requires market validation, brand building, and infrastructure set up. So all of these things are the key areas that businesses are built upon. The other area, of course, is buying into a franchise, which is becoming more and more popular. Some of you might know that franchising have gone from under 1,000 to nearly 1,500 uh, franchise opportunities in the last sort of 5 years. So it's a growing area of opportunity. And in franchising, you have a proven model. You have a brand that's been not only built, but it's recognized in the marketplace. And they've got support to help you, not so much on how to run a business, but how to run a successful franchise using their franchise model. So there's less flexibility with that way of entering into business. There are, of course, ongoing fees and costs associated with that. What with the franchise fee, the setup of the business, and the infrastructure, and of course the ongoing royalty fees that you pay at different various levels. And then there's a contractual obligation, and in fact, most franchises you sign up for somewhere between 5 and 10 years franchise agreement. And the last one we're going to cover is buying existing businesses. So with doing that, you have to find the cash from somewhere, either from investors, or you may have made some money yourself from already working in the industry. And with that, of course, you can buy an infrastructure that's in place. You can buy a customer base. You may well have staff that are used to working in the business and are willing to continue with the new owner yourself. But there could be hidden liabilities. If something's gone wrong in the past and a customer wants to come back at the company, there may well be things like the cultural fit, which is really an important part of what you do as a business, both internal cultural fit between the people that are working in the business, but also with customers and the outward presentation you make to them of the business and of your brand values and business values. So a bit of due diligence is required just to see whether this is something that you want to go into and buy the business or buy the assets of the business. And those are two different things.
Yeah. There's also, you can take over from a family business. I think we talked about that before we came on board here. So, yeah, the three basic models there. So they each have their pros and cons. So let's talk about those a little bit. So, starting from scratch, you're basically starting from zero in this particular case, or at least this is kind of, the what we're thinking as one of the three. Yes, there are pros. You're going to have full control. You're going to make every decision from branding to operations to culture of the business. You're going to have innovation freedom. You can build something entirely new. Look at Amazon. Look at Google. Look at all these industry disruptors. This is the option where you would literally disrupt the market or solve a unique problem, or in some cases create a solution. Or you create a solution, and then later on down the road they find to find a problem.
I guess it's fair to say here, Mike.
Oh, go ahead, Paul.
Sorry. I thought you were having a break then. I was going to say, I guess it's fair to say that that both of us have actually been involved in sort of starting up businesses from scratch, and actually had the pain and in some instances some of the gain from the benefits of doing that. But it's not been without its challenges. Even if you've been in the industry for many years, and you feel that you know an awful lot about the business in terms of what you do, what the service you provide, or the product that you make. But actually, when you then turn that into a business and you multiply the skill sets that you need into the 7 areas of running a business, that challenges open up that you never thought that would be there before. Things like managing the cash flow, looking at the P&L, looking at markup and margin, all these different things that you haven't had to do when you've been an employee of a business.
You're absolutely right. One of the other pros that you would have with starting a business from scratch is your innovation freedom. You can build something entirely new. Or I think we talked about that. So, those types of people that really are visionaries, real visionaries, and have some sort of an idea, this is really going to be for them. As far as your business really would reflect your values and your vision from day one. Whereas when you have a franchise, you're buying into somebody else's ideas that's already been proven. Or if you buy an existing business, then you would have to change it from currently what it is, unless you already like it. But then you're not really an innovator per se. So, go ahead, Paul.
I was just going to say what's interesting in what you've just said is that I was just harping back to some of the businesses that I was involved with in starting up from scratch. And if I had my time again, one of the things that I would have done was actually talk to somebody that had the experience of running a business and actually, if you like, minimize some of the pain that I went through by the learnings from somebody else that's already gone through it. And I think that when you're actually in the moment of starting up the business, you're very, very enthusiastic about the product or service that you're offering, and you think everybody wants to buy it, and so on and so forth. And you tend to cut corners, or at least try and cut corners with not putting a full sort of business plan together and the financials together and so on, and then sharing between the whole team of people that are involved, if there is a team indeed, as to what the goal is that you've set yourself for the next 6 months, 12 months, 3 years, and what the vision is for the business. I think that for me, that's something that is worth exploring more, is how can you cut down that time of starting your own business and actually getting to a point where you're making some money.
Yeah, and every startup is going to have a little bit, different. I mean, I think it was Amazon ran how many years in the negative without ever making a single
a
single dollar. So depending on, but they were incredibly disruptive. And it took such a massive amount of money investment to make that cultural shift from, we bought everything in stores to now buying stuff online. That was a huge cultural shift. So, Yeah, but that kind of leads into how with this type of model, your business would reflect your values and your vision from day one. So clearly, Jeff Bezos, he had a vision. Yes, he started off selling books online, but then he had a much larger vision. And it took a substantial number of years and effort and investment in order to make that shift.
Certainly is.
So let's talk about some of the cons. So obviously a lot higher risk. There's no brand recognition, no customer base, and there's no proven model. Everything must be built. So again, we can go back to you and I both lived through the .com era, and I remember there used to be a .com for everything, and most of them have now disappeared. So there is a lot of risk in starting up new businesses, especially when you have a kind of a, what do they call it, a technological change that everyone's trying. The AI fad that's kind of going on, or I don't know if we want to call it, but it's a shift. It's a technological shift. And yes, I think we probably going into a little bit of a bubble on this, and there'll be a bit of a shakeout of some of these AI businesses, but then we'll come back and then it'll really reshape into something new, into this new AI world that we're going to live in. But with this model, you're also more likely to have slower growth. It takes time to gain traction and build systems and to scale. Again, just like I said, if the larger the shift in the culture that you have, depending on your idea, it could take lots of money and lots of time in order to ever turn a profit. Smaller ideas, smaller time it takes to grow and turn a profit, but those are the things to think of when you're thinking about what kind of business do you want to have. If you've never had a business before, it's also a lot more resource intensive. For you're going to need to wear many hats and invest heavily in learning, hiring, and infrastructure. When it's going to be just you to start off with, it's going to be long days, it's going to be weekends, it's going to be you're going to be the accountant, you're going to be the operations person, you're going to be the salesperson, you're going to do all these things to start off with until you start to have enough investments to then pay for more people, etc., to come on, to take on that additional work for you before you start to make a profit.
I think one of the things that I've certainly seen, Michael, is that people underestimate just how long that's going to take, and therefore how much money do they need to finance themselves, because most people have either rent to pay or a mortgage to pay, and they have a family, or they have some financial obligations that they need to cover, and I remember talking to a few people that have said in the past that they've got enough money for 3 months worth of trading to not make anything for 3 months, and they thought that was quite adequate, when in fact actually you need to think about a longer period and a ramp up in your terms of business and the money that you make, because there's this thing called cash flow, and it's getting customers to pay for the work that they do and in a timely manner and all of those things. So, if you think about the challenge, and especially starting from scratch, and you then multiply the difficulty by 2 or 3 times to what you originally think, you might be somewhere near to it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this type of model really is best for visionary entrepreneurs who really want to build something original and are comfortable with uncertainty. You'll find that when you look back at founders, many of them are going to be in their 20s when they founded companies. So they don't have the money, but yet they've got the time and they got the energy. A lot of these types of businesses that are cultural shift, really big dynamic companies, the more than likely you're going to find that they're going to have been started by founders in their 20s more often than not.
Yeah, good point.
So the next thing,
Yeah.
let's talk about the pros and cons around franchising. So franchising is another option that you can do. So let's talk about some of the pros around franchising. So the first thing out of the gate is you've got a proven model and you've got a support system. You're going to have training, you're going to have marketing, operational playbooks. All of these things are already done for you. So you're buying into a system that already is foundationally, there. It's so you just, cookie cutter, these are your McDonald's, your Taco Bells, your Domino's pizzas. So you just take the formula, reduplicate it. They'll teach you everything you need to know. And it is also a much faster ramp up. You can start earning revenue much more quickly with this proven formula.
It's an interesting area of operating a business, I think, and a growing area. I think the thing that I've seen is people coming into franchising who perhaps haven't run a business before and are under the impression that it's going to help them learn to run a business, and it won't. It will help
Mhm.
you as an individual. If you have knowledge of how to run a business, then the franchise model will fit very nicely with that knowledge and then help you move forward. But it is the one caveat I'd say on franchising is that you need to either be confident that you know how to run a business, or that you've got advisors in place that will help you.
I think you've got a little bit of franchising background in your history. What could you tell me about what would be the average age of people that buy into franchises? Do you see?
Yeah, I mean, I've been involved with selling the more expensive side of franchising, the higher investment, and what we normally find is that people are in their 30s and 40s, and they this isn't their first business. They've run a business or two, made some money, and a lot of the time, when you look at corporation tax and the level that it's at now, these individuals have made substantial amounts of money and want to invest it rather than pay the tax, and so buying a franchise is a great operation to do that with. But age-wise, I mean, yes, I have seen individuals that have been very successful in their 20s, but it is a commitment to paying money up front, if you like, for a franchise fee, getting a geographical area, and in a lot of the franchises, because they're actually selling a product or like a food or entertainment or you know something similar, they revolve around premises. So clearly there's a commitment to a lease, and so all of these things add up to a business that's bigger than if you were starting a business from scratch. And of course that does I wouldn't say put people off in the younger age, but certainly they're a bit more wary of what they need to know. So in the age wise, I'd say it's in the 30s through to the late 40s is the more prominent age area.
Yeah, it's certainly much lower risk, which is the benefit of having franchises. Like we've talked about, it's a proven model. You buy it, but then of course, let's get it. We can talk about some of the cons with franchises. First of all, you've got less autonomy, so you must follow the franchisor's rules and their branding and their systems. The reason why there's a system is because it's been a proven model. They've already tested what works and what doesn't work, etc. So you will find that there's some franchises that are probably less known franchises that you may or may not think of, where you would potentially have a little bit more autonomy, but you're still going to want to have their own brandings, but you might have some more flexibility in pricing or offerings in your little regional area that you may be in. But then there's also the big players, again, your Domino's or your McDonald's or, your big players. You're not going to have much of any autonomy at all. You're really going to want to play by their playbook. But at the same time, there's very little risk to that, because they've already figured out what works and what doesn't work. So
Yeah.
again, play by the rules and you'll win.
No, good points made. I think the interesting factor with something like McDonald's is that you're buying into something which is long established. You're going through their academy, for want of a better description, if you like, and learning the ropes, and then you're taking over a site. But I think more and more I'm hearing from people that have talked to me that you need multiple sites to be able to make a reasonable amount of money from it. Otherwise, you're buying into a business that's going to give you effectively a good income, a good salary, if you like. So it's an interesting one, that one, because other franchises, like you mentioned, there are levels of flexibility, and if you're an outright entrepreneur and you want, you've got your firm ideas, then franchising isn't for you. But if you're somebody that can be open-minded to follow an established process, then it could well be for you. But you have to buy into the fact that you're paying fees not only up front but on an ongoing basis. And the franchises I've seen over the years, they go through a process of in the early stages. Yes, they're learning and they're going to it with an open mind and so on. And then once they feel they know the model, then they question as to why they're paying the money that they're paying. But of course, it's the fact that the franchisor has taken the risk, established the brand, spent money on a continued basis to market it, provide a central website in many instances, at which the franchisee takes part in. All those support functions cost money, and of course that has to come from somewhere, and that's where it comes from. So if you can get your head around that, then there's quite a good, considerable income to be had from franchising.
Yeah, those franchise fees, they can eat into your profits. However, just remember, you're paying for success. Some of the clients that I've got, what I explain to them is, look, you're going to pay regardless. You're either going to pay somebody that's an expert to have you prevent mistakes, and you'll get from A to B in success or a particular target metric that you want to reach faster, but you'll pay him or her for that experience. Or you'll pay in mistakes and it will take you longer. So either way, you're going to have to pay. It just depends on which way you want to go about it. And the other thing is obviously limited innovation. We've talked a little bit about this. You're restricted in how much you can customize or evolve the business. But again, that supports the pros about franchising is you're buying into a successful model, and you just follow the model. Really, the best, the franchising model is really best for operators who want a lower risk entry into entrepreneurship and value structure over flexibility. Then what we're going to do is we're going to talk about buying into an existing business. So this is kind of the third one. This is another great option, and happens a lot. So this is your mergers, acquisitions. It's really quick start. You can inherit customers, revenue, and infrastructure instantly, when you acquire a business. You've got established systems, processes, staff, and vendor relationships. These things are already in place when you buy the business. And again, it doesn't have to be a franchise that you're buying, although you could do that, but then you're buying into the franchise model. But it could be a mom and pop that you're buying into. A printing press, or it could be something where they're selling printer ink, or whatever the case may be. It's not a franchise. You're not trying to start something from scratch, but you're buying Mary and John's printing business, whatever. And so all those things are established for you, which is really nice, which is what you're buying. So you do have that immediate cash flow, and the profits from day one. There's any thoughts on that? Go ahead, Paul.
I, I guess the thing with that is to look at, when you're buying an existing business, how much is that business revolving around the existing owners of the business, and how much is, if the owner were to leave, will the customers leave with them? But if they'll stay, and if the owner will go through an earn out period or a handover period, whatever you want to call it, then it's a great way of getting into the business, the industry, with an established base, and hopefully some income from day one.
You're making a very good point, and the types of businesses that can come to mind are going to be, perhaps those that would be a law practice. If you're going to acquire a sole proprietor lawyer, and that lawyer, in fact, my stepfather was a tax attorney, and he was all by himself. So, if he were to have, sold it, people are buying him, and that can be a bit tricky, because then you've got, you as the new owner, you've got to get those customers to realize, hey, I'm, now taking over the business. You need to, so there's that trust transition from the old owner to you, the person that's acquiring that law firm, because eventually that person is going to fully retire after they've spent their 6 months to a year or two, after, or that transition period after the purchase of the business. So that is, you've kind of got doctors, orthodontists, dentists, those types of things, kind of fall into those categories, or can fall into those categories. And again, they tend to be more service based. If you're manufacturing stuff, then people don't really have that buy-in to that particular person. It's generally in the service industry. So those are things to consider when you are looking at buying and evaluating an existing business.
We had a very interesting situation in my local village, actually, where we've got a bakery, a standalone family business that had been going for many years. The owner decided to sell, and the new owners took over. And within a couple of years, it was not doing very well at all. And in actual fact, the original owners bought it back from the people that bought it from them, and have rekindled the business, refocused it, and brought it back into what it was. So the point being that there's no guarantees that when you buy an existing business that it will survive and flourish, because it comes down to you and your team as to how you manage it, how you become the new face of that business, how you, these days and age, it's social media, it's supplier relationships, it's staff relationships, it's that whole thing about taking on this thing called the culture of the business and the brand values, and extending them from the previous owner, and actually building on them rather than detracting from them. And what I saw was they were being detracted from, and the business failed, and so the old owners came back in.
Yeah, just as you were talking, there was something else that came into my mind. When I was younger, there was a favorite restaurant, one of my favorite restaurants. It was a little hot dog restaurant. It wasn't very big, and it was near my house. It was a business called Dandy Dogs, and that thing had been running since at least the early 70s, I would think. And it had been around for a long time. It had a huge cultural following. They had just, it had just been around for so long. Everybody knew about it. Kids like me, we'd be running around the neighborhood, and we had some pocket change that, mom and dad gave us in the morning. And as we're riding our bikes around the neighborhood, and then we got hungry, let's head over and go get something to eat over at Dandy Dogs. And it was great food. The owner, was there from time to time. You saw the same people, And there's nothing fancy about it whatsoever. It didn't even really have much in the way of branding. It was just the same menu board for so many years. It was consistent, it was great, and like I said, it just had a cultural following. But eventually, that person had to sell the business. They had it. I think they probably sold it in, I want to say, the late 90s, and it was never the same. The new owners came in, they changed the menu up a little bit, and then they made this 50s theme, and it just really wasn't quite the same thing. There are different people behind the counter, and it just wasn't quite the same experience. So that can happen. So you just have to be very careful about when you consider buying a business, an existing business. um, think about, if you were to make any changes, what would the negative or positive impact could potentially be in making those changes. And unfortunately, Danny Dogs doesn't exist anymore, which is a real shame. Because it was, again, like I said, it was such a cult following. Everybody loved to go there. It was so popular, but then when it changed hands, it just couldn't survive under the new ownership. So yeah, some things to consider. So we kind of talk about some of the cons. You've got legacy issues, potentially. You might inherit outdated systems, cultural problems, or some poor reputation. Well, in this case, in my example, it was a really great reputation. Um, there's valuation risks, so you could end up overpaying or discover hidden liabilities. And then, of course, as new owners, you may have some new ideas, or you might have an existing business and you're bolting on another existing business, or yet you have an existing business where you're buying something from a supplier and you decide, you know what, why don't we just buy the supplier and cut costs that way? That's another option as well. But when you do that, you're buying another company's culture. And how are you going to change that culture to fit either for what your vision is or your existing company's culture? And I see where so many times companies go out and they'll acquire other businesses, and whilst it looks great on paper, culturally it ends up destroying the other company. There's so many examples of this. You really need to think through the change management as you acquire this business. Your existing staff, the customers may resist the new leadership, or the direction that new business owner is taking.
One of the things that is worth pointing out with buying existing businesses is that are you buying the business or are you buying the assets of the business? Because in buying the business, you have all of the inherent risk of any challenges and issues that may have been latent, if you like, and may come up once you've bought the business. But if you're buying the assets, then they can liquidate the piece of the business that's left, and you can merge their assets into your business. But I think the big thing is if you start a business yourself from scratch, you build it up. It's an ideal way of looking at how you can extend the footprint of your business and how you can grow. And use hopefully the profits from the business that you've started up from scratch by buying a competitor or a business that complements your business. You might be an electrician that wants to go into plumbing, and you decide to buy a small plumbing business and amalgamate the team within theirs into yours. And as long as you can bring them together culturally, the big fun part, if you like, is understanding your brand and their brand. And do you keep the brand separately, or do you create a new brand, or do you foster it under your existing brand? Because if you're an electrician, for instance, you might have PJ electricians, and if you buy a plumber's, well, the plumbing side of it, it doesn't really fit. So that's another area to look at. But if it's the right fit to bring the business together, then there's always a way that you can take it forward.
Yeah, one of the companies that I know a little bit about in the U.S. is a company called Waste Connections, and they're an acquisition company. And they go around and they have this is how they've grown so large so fast. That they buy up mom and pop garbage companies or refuse companies in the UK, around the United States, and in some instances they will remove the name of the waste hauling company, and they'll just call it Waste Connections. But a lot of times they'll look at that brand and the what that brand means to that city or town that they service, and is it worth keeping that brand name, Joe's Garbage Collection. Then they'll just put the tagline in, a Waste Connections company. So they've thought that that branding is so embedded into the community that it's worth keeping, and then they just put the tagline in underneath that it's a Waste Connections company. But they keep their billing, has the original logos of that company, etc. So there's a couple schools of thought when you think, is it worth acquiring business, and if so, what is the plan to actually to how that business, what you're going to do with it when you acquire it, or what you're going to do when you acquired it and integrate it into an existing business that you've got.
I mean, clearly through integrating businesses together, you've got the economies of scale by bringing two head offices together, if you like. And if you've got two individuals that are paying accounts, you only need one. And so you might get a saving of 10 or 15% on the operational cost, which can produce a profit in the business, which actually can pay off the borrowings that you've had to borrow to buy the business. So it could be self-funding. I know in the UK, a pretty good illustration of this was I was involved in a company called Debenhams, a big retailer in the UK. Back in the 60s and 70s, they went through and bought up a lot of the local department stores that were either regionalized or in particular cities. And they were run by families at that point. And Debenhams took them over, but they didn't rebrand them. They carried them in their own family names, and they integrated the culture. They then started by changing the interiors of the stores to look more like the Debenhams estate of stores. And then eventually they decided to rebrand. But by then, the marketplace, especially the financial marketplace, knew that Debenhams was made up of a whole portfolio of shops under different names, and that the natural thing would be to bring them under the one brand, which is what they did.
Oh, very good story. So looking at our third option here, really this is best for strategic buyers who want to scale quickly and are skilled at transformation and integration, just like we talked about. So those are the kind of the pros and cons of all three of those. Let's move on. Let's talk about the next slide.
Cool. Well, here we're going to talk about the skills and resources that you need, and an interesting point here is what's your propensity to risk, because depending upon your individual circumstances can depend upon how long you're prepared to go without paying yourself a full salary, or how long you're prepared to go in terms of investing the money that you've put aside for the business, or going without a salary. And it's understanding also your why, your passion versus opportunity. So what you really want to make this business work. You've got a passion for doing what you do. You've seen the opportunity locally. You've looked at the marketplace. You've researched the opportunity to you becoming successful. I guess you've looked at the competitors and what they're offering and the pricing and how you could fit in and into the marketplace and sort of slide into being another operator in there. And it's whether you're looking at increasing the size of the pie of the work that's in the area through innovation or new ideas that you're bringing, or in fact taking a slice from somebody else that's already in that area. And that's an interesting one, because if the pie is only so big and there are already operators in there, then you're going to be taking away business from them. and they're not going to go and let you do that easily, are they? So, and looking at the trends, where's the marketplace going that you're active in? Is this a service and a product that the market wants, and it's going to continue to want for quite a time? And I guess clarify your financial situation. The time period, the runway, if you like, that you can fly down to be able to stay into operation before you become profitable. Because it's been certainly my experience that I've had to weather the storm of running my own businesses a long time before I've seen any return myself. I've seen it paying staff and paying overheads and paying bills and so on. But when can I see a return for myself?
Yeah,
so what's your view, Michael?
Yeah, no, it's those are all things that you really need to consider about, where you are, how much money you may have, what kind of business you want to have, what's your risk tolerance, what's the risk tolerance of your idea if it's something that you're going to start with. There was a movie way back. It was made, I think, in the 90s. I think it was called Silicon Valley Nerds or something like that. It was a story about how Bill Gates and Steve Jobs started. And I remember part of that was around, Steve Jobs and Wozniak. They were, they had this idea. They were building out a sample computer. They couldn't get a loan from any bank. Nobody could see their vision. It was just too far ahead until finally, I think it was perhaps it was a guy from Intel or something. I can't quite remember what it was. If you remember, mention in the comments below. And finally, they got venture capital investment into starting up their idea. So I think they got quite lucky. So it just kind of there's a number of different variables there that you need to consider, and what and again along, is it if it is starting from scratch, how visionary is it? So all these things you guys kind of have to take into consideration. If you can't get enough money, do you have enough savings to survive for 1, 2, 3 years, or is it just things you just have to think about?
I think one of the things I think one of the things we've done as coaches is sit down with people that are looking at or in their early stage of running a business, look at the key areas. We refer to them as the 7 areas of the business, and just looking at what their skills and experience are in those areas, and looking at their expectations, because everybody's different, aren't they? And I think one of the things before you start a business is looking at the people involved. What do they want out of it, and how soon do they want out of it, and is it reasonable, the sort of ideas and thoughts you've got on the development of the business, and then do they have the resources and skills to actually deliver what's required? Because if there's a shortfall in the skills, the business is going to be challenged to survive. And it's not a case of, we're not skilled in finance, or we'll leave that. We've got a bookkeeper, they can look at that, blah blah blah. But what bookkeepers and accountants, they actually report on what's happened. They very rarely look at what the forecast is for the business, and that's
a whole other topic.
As a business owner, you have to start looking at, how do I put together a spreadsheet? How do I know what am I going to do? How am I going to make this happen? And it's building blocks. It's like, when we're children, we play with Lego, and these blocks are strewn across the floor, but 15 minutes later, we've got a bridge, and we've got some, bits and pieces that we're playing with, and all of a sudden, we've got some something that we've made out of it. And that's really what we're talking about with the business, is bringing those bricks together and forming something.
Absolutely, knowing your own strengths and weaknesses. I see a lot of techie people. They're very good at coding and building the actual software themselves, and then all of a sudden they don't know how to run a business. Yeah. Very good. All right. So who should you take advice from? Oh, that's a good one. What do you think, Paul?
Well, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I think nearly all of the businesses I was involved with 20, 30 years ago, we never really took advice from anybody other than talking to the bank manager. Okay, so I think nowadays it's a lot easier with the likes of LinkedIn, social media, YouTube, and so on to reach out and find people that have gone through a career, they've had the experience, and actually they want to give something back. And a bit like ourselves, we just want to bring some thoughts and ideas and help people. And of course, it's a business we provide and a service. But I think really it's sitting down and being honest with yourself and thinking about what do you really need. And if you don't know what you need, then talk to somebody who might be able to help you and ask the right questions of you as to where you are with your business and the ability to make your business successful. Because business coaches are a great idea, and they basically don't provide the answers. They provide the questions that to ask for you to provide the answers. And but it's that level of risk and reward that you're prepared to go for. I think the other thing, of course, is again, people like ourselves that have been there and done that. We can act as mentors. So what's a mentor? Well, a mentor really is somebody that can stand by you and help you walk the walk. So if you think you're on a journey and you're going on your own, it's very lonely. But if you've got somebody with you, you can be chatting along the way. You can be looking at the scenery. You can be, each of you can look at a problem that might be to get from this side of the bridge to the next side of the bridge when it's broken. All those sort of things. And it's the same in business. When you've got somebody that is supporting you as a mentor, it's a great way to feel a lot more comfortable, confident, and able within your early stage of developing your business.
Well, I guess the last thing you want to do is try and go at it on your own. It's a lot more difficult when you don't have anybody to talk to, and sometimes that's really all you need. You just need someone to talk to, bounce ideas off, and again, a business coach can help, just ask questions that maybe you didn't think about, make you ponder, make you think that, oh, okay, I hadn't considered that. Maybe that's a good idea, or maybe I ought to consider, this, that, the other, etc.
I think the elephant in the room with that is with these all of these services. How much does it cost? And not that we're going to cover it here, but I mean, it's a lot less than you think. You're talking a few £100s a month rather than thousands of pounds a month, and there are different levels of package that can be offered and so on. So it's coaches generally aren't here to fleece you of your money. They seem to be more genuinely wanting to help you build a successful business and come on the journey with you. So I'd say it's certainly worth looking at that. We talk about financial advice, and so I spoke about bank manager earlier on, and that's an interesting one because banks are in business to loan you money, and they're very quick at wanting the money back when they see that perhaps your business isn't doing too well. So whilst they are a source of loans, might not be necessarily the right place for you to borrow money. You might be better off looking at an investor and talking through angel investor type concepts or private equity if your business is big enough and interesting enough for somebody. Other advisors are legal advisors. That's an interesting one because as you build a business, you also want to protect the business. And initially, if you're going into property, you need to make sure that you're getting into the right sort of lease and that you're not making commitments that you can't meet, and all of these other things. And clearly, on the HR side of managing people, you want to have legal, support on how best to manage your people, but also on your intellectual property. It's one area that I've found that as people grow a business, especially from scratch, they haven't thought through, because they've never had to do it before, about how do you actually register a trademark for your brand or your idea of copyright and all this sort of thing. So again, it's worth considering that when the time's right to talk to the professionals, because a lot of these things, certainly I thought they cost an absolute fortune to protect yourself, and they don't. It's worth discussing them with your coach, your mentor, or your legal or financial advisors. And I think this is a great point that we noted here with the franchise consultants, because franchises are great, but if you've never been into a franchise before, then again, it's a good idea to find somebody that's got some franchise experience that can guide you along the pitfalls and the opportunities, especially in the early days, because what you're going to be asked to do is sign a franchise agreement, and these agreements are normally multiple pages in legal jargon, and really do need an input from a lawyer and a franchise consultant. But those are good ones. I think the mergers and acquisitions. Do you know, when I've spoken to a lot of people, it sounds very grand. Mergers and acquisitions. Wow, you've got to be a big company for that. And the reality is, it's just looking at, you've made some money. You don't want to pay the level of corporation tax that the government's asking for. Your accountant says you can invest it by perhaps buying other assets for the business. One of the things you can do is take over a competitor or a supplier, as you said, or another business of some sort or another, maybe even different to the industry that you're in, and grow your portfolio of opportunity. And so again, it's who do you go to for that? And the initial thing is to talk to somebody like a mentor or a coach, but then they will no doubt suggest specialists that will be able to help you in exploring that more. But I mean, Michael, what sort of experience have you had, or points that you'd like to add here? Because it's a really good area to discuss.
Yeah, so there's multiple different opportunities, and just something simple can come into mind. So there's an office where there's two different businesses. One's a dentist, one's an orthodontist. Run by two completely different people. They just happen to be renting the office space in the building. I mean, there could be an opportunity to merge the two together, because why not just share? There could be cost savings. You've got children coming into the dentist, and you just say, well, why don't we can do your braces. Otherwise, if you don't, and a patient comes in, well, my daughter and my son needs to get braces. Who do you recommend? And unless there's some sort of tie with the orthodontist just down the hall, they say, well, could be, the one across the hall, or you could look at these other ones. So there's a complementary business opportunity right there to acquire or merge those two businesses together. That's just a very simple example where they're different, similar, but complementary to one another. Or you could literally just, if you have yourself your own tax and accounting business, again, most of that is now online. You don't need. I know my tax guy. I do see him once a year for lunch, but other than that, we talk through Teams. So his clients are spread throughout the country. He doesn't need to physically be there. So there's an opportunity as a tax person to just acquire tax businesses, because it's all done remotely now. You don't have to go from client to client physically. So there's an opportunity there. You can just gobble up, tax and accounting, mom and pop accounting practices. There's an opportunity there. So there's just lots of different opportunities to think about. And just like you said, finding somebody that, again, this goes back to, you can pay an expert to help you be successful quicker from A to B. Or you can go on it on your own, and it might cost you and some mistakes because you didn't know about them, you didn't learn about them, and those are learning mistakes. And it can take you a bit longer to go from A to B. But then when you do the next one and the next one and the next one, you've learned from the previous ones. So just some things to think about when you consider who you're going to take advice from.
No, good points.
All right, so let's talk about, oh my gosh, writing a business plan. Ever written a business plan, Paul?
Well, I'm just thinking that. I'm thinking how many times I've had writer's block when actually doing a business plan. And And I have to say that whether it's myself doing it for myself or for other clients, it's such a daunting task of when you sort of think about business, like where do I start? You
Oh
know,
yeah.
and the reality is really you're just recording a point in time as to what your thoughts are about a series of points that need to be covered in the business plan, and just recording them down, because you can refer back to it as you're going on this journey. Because I mean, how many times have you started a business and 3 months, 6 months, 9 months down the line, the reason why you started it or the way you thought the business was going to go, it's all changed,
Oh
and
yeah.
probably for the better, but it's all changed. And you end up revisiting your business plan and rewriting it for the next 12, 24, 48 months, based on where the business is at that point. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, it is a daunting, but I think necessary task to do. But it is something that can be as big as small as you want it to be. And I think there are a number of templates out there that you and I use and are available on the internet. And but the main thing really is, don't let it become the elephant in the room. Don't let it become something
Yeah.
that you just don't come to terms with, because really, if you take it in bite-sized chunks, it's okay. You can do it.
Yeah. A business plan really lays out your destination and the route to get to where you want to be. It helps you define your mission, your vision, and your goals of what you want to accomplish. Clarifies your target market, your value proposition, and whatever competitive edge that you feel like you want to draw out. So you need to map out your financial model, your marketing strategy, and your operational plan. All these things help you put substance down onto paper. Without a roadmap, you're just wandering. Without one, you're just navigating aimlessly. So it's very important to have a business plan. Again, it doesn't have to be 100 pages, doesn't even need to be 20 pages. It just depends on you, what you're wanting to do, and then what makes sense. Ultimately, it's it's your pitch deck. So whether you're talking to investors, partners, or even hiring your first employee, your business plan really becomes that pitch deck for you and what you're doing. So it's
Even if you're talking
ultimately
to your
for
parents,
you. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. Even if you're talking to your parents about borrowing a relatively small amount of money to help you on your first business, they want to know that you have taken the trouble to write down what you're trying to achieve, and they want to feel that you're in control. And for those areas of the business that you haven't got experience in, what are you going to do to learn? And that might be that we've identified a number of books that people can read for self-help. There's obviously working with a coach or a mentor. There's talking to the bank manager. There's all these different things that need to be done alongside you making the product or providing the service that's your core of your business. Which I think when you write your business plan, it becomes can become quite daunting, that you've got all these things to do alongside actually doing the work in the business. And so many times, I mean, we've had this conversation before about people working in the business and working on the business. And here we're talking about working on the business, and how do you get that balance? And what is the balance, for goodness sake? How much time should I spend on my business plan, my marketing plan, my communication strategy, my activity plan for going and posting things on social media? And these are just the grand words, if you like, for things that you're doing naturally. You're thinking, okay, so how am I going to tell people that I'm an electrician? Well, I'm going to go on social media and I'm going to put I've got some time available, and I've got a website. Have a look at what I do, and give me a call, see if I can help you. So the business plan is a real deep dive, if you like, into the early stages of what you think you want to do with your business.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely, it's a business, the business plan lays out your destination and the route and how you want to get there. So yeah, it's vitally important. Let's talk about some of the sections that you're going to need to have into your business plan. So you've got the executive summary. This is the purpose. It's a snapshot of your entire business plan. And think of it as your elevator pitch. Some things you want to include, your business name, location, and mission, a brief overview of your products and services, your target market, your financial highlights. But often what you want to do, surprisingly, even though it's the first thing in your business plan, should be one of the last things you write. Write
You're
everything else
absolutely right.
first, and then come back and circle back around, and then write that last.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, many a time I've sat down with somebody and we talked about the executive summary, and a lot of it, when you're talking to a client and you start exploring the business, a lot of the executive summary points come out in a casual conversation. But then when you go through the key areas like you've listed here and more, and you start writing down the substance, if you like, ultimately it gives you more to put into the executive summary. But you want to keep it fairly brief, but because somebody is looking at your business, whether they're looking at it for investment or a loan, or just sharing the thoughts and ideas with somebody that you're looking to acquire a business with, what your business is all about, the executive summary should really give them a snapshot within a sort of 5-minute read, really.
Yep, exactly. So moving on to market analysis, and I see the bullet points, the market analysis, product marketing, operations plan, financial projections, all those shouldn't be indented from the executive summary. So apologies for that. They should all just be all lined up. So the market analysis, this is really the purpose of this is to show you understand your industry, customers, and your competitors. So things you want to include, industry trends and growth potential, target customer demographics and behaviors, your competitive landscape and market gaps. So those are things that you want to consider into your market analysis. What it basically does is it gives the reader, and again, this is you understanding, for you, gives you understanding of your target market and why you want to provide the products or services, to these specific clients and who you're going to target. But when you are looking to, get loans or venture capital or whatever that may be, those that's your pitch deck to them, and that's where they're going to say, okay, well, this is great, this is a good idea, but who are you going to get? Who are you going to sell to? Tell me, show me confidence. Build my confidence that who you're going to be selling to. That's all part of really doing a thorough market analysis. Then the next thing is you've got your product and service offerings. The purpose of this is really to explain what you're selling and why it's valuable. Things to include: description of your product or service, unique value proposition, your life cycle, pricing, and development plans. As you know, there's let's just take the Apple iPhones or any phones. They're constantly creating the next version of the iPhone. Or what are they on? Apple iPhone version 18.
Yeah.
I don't have an iPhone, but I don't know how many iterations of iPhones that there have been, but that's their, that's Apple's offering, and keep, creating the next version of the iPhone, better and better and better. So, yeah. Marketing and sales strategy. Really, kind of the purpose here is to outline how you'll attract and retain your customers. So you need to give some real thought to marketing and strategy. Any thoughts about marketing and strategy? You want to add into that,
I think
Paul?
what's interesting about starting up a business and people that haven't gone into marketing and sales before is that a lot of the time it's a reactive business. So in other words, they put out their stall that they're an electrician in their local area. They might put a telephone number up on the social media or something, and a way to contact them, and people react, and they come to them. But then they're relying on people coming to them. They're not being proactive, they're being reactive.
Mhm.
And what we're talking really is about putting together a communication strategy that can communicate the product or services that you're offering, the point of difference that you have over your competitors, and to a degree the sort of pricing and an opportunity for doing the work in what sort of timely manner. How are you going to communicate all of that to your target market? So on the one hand, the market analysis and the geodemographic profiling of the geography in the surrounding area that you're based, how many potential clients are there for your product or service, and how are you going to talk to them? And with the advent of social media and with sites like Facebook and LinkedIn and so on, there's lots of opportunities that aren't very expensive to be able to actually communicate this to
Correct.
the market.
Yeah, depending on what makes sense for you, yeah, first certainly Facebook has changed over a period of the last however long it's been around, 20 years or so. LinkedIn is a bit more business professional. I know that when I had my large apartment complex back in the States back in the day, I know I advertised right on Facebook. Was very detailed, the types of demographics I was looking for, the area, etc. And it was all fairly reasonable at the time. And the response that I got was really, really high. Now I haven't used it in a good 10 years. I'm sure it has changed dramatically since. But and Facebook has kind of changed over the years, but at the time it was very, very successful to me and allowed me to keep my occupancy at really pretty much 100% all the time. So I found it very successful at that time. A lot of people also find LinkedIn very successful. So yeah, things to consider, depending on the type of business that you're looking at. It may or may not make sense to either do either of these, but again, you have to look at your specific needs and your specific industry and business.
I think it's a good area also to consider what your skills are in terms of posting and
Mhm.
strategizing around this. And what I've seen is, because there's a lot more software tools, if you like, that are becoming available, that as an individual you could learn the software, things like the creative software Canva, and
Mhm.
other pieces that are available. So you can go out and get low cost designers, creators, social media experts that you can work with, and that might be a route that you fancy going, if this is an area that you find daunting to operate in. Or you can learn it yourself, and
Yeah.
take it on board yourself.
It is getting so much easier. Yes, with the advent of AI, it's a lot easier to do websites and content creation, more so than it was just just 3, 4, 5 years ago. And the softwares that are on offer to do stuff now, it becomes where it's so easy you can do it yourself, but now it becomes a time problem. Yes, it's a lot less expensive and a lot faster, and you can do it yourself, but then how many of these things can you realistically take on yourself versus hiring? Okay, yes, I could very easily build or modify a website using AI tools, but is it worth just spending the extra money to hiring somebody to do it and do it better than I can, and then understanding all the intricacies of pointing a domain name to the website and publishing it, and all the intricacies if you're going to putting schedules and shopping on your website and all this stuff. It just may be too much for you. So yes, the more and more the average person can do it, but then you also have to weigh that against, okay, you got to learn how to do it. It's going to cost you in time, or you can just pay somebody to just do it and you can get from A to B a lot faster. So all these things just kind of consider as you're starting your business, or whether you're buying an existing business, where you are in any one of these things. Moving on to operations plan. Yeah, so you're going to detail your business, how your business is going to run day to day, and that's going to, be drastically different from whether you're a doctor's office, you're a plumber, an electrician, to, a law firm, or a printing press, or whatever that may be. But you do need to have an operational plan, and it can be, this is how I see this working in the first 6 months, and then this is what it would potentially look like in the 6 to 12 months, and then 1 to 2 years, and then 2 years and beyond. But just so that you've actually thought through how you're going to execute some sort of plan or some sort of an idea. So yeah.
I think what's better to say is that even in your early stage, you're going to have a sort of an acquisition plan, if you like. So how do I acquire my customers? You're then going to have a plan circled around, okay, so now I've got my customers. How am I going to take their interest, turn it into a quotation, actually price it up into and get it out to them and get their approval on that quotation, ready to then actually do the work. So there's 3 areas of operations, if you like: acquiring the customer, going through getting the particular order from the customer, and then executing the order.
Yeah, absolutely. And every business can be a little bit different, but you do need to spell out the details about how you're going to get those orders or that customer fulfilled with your products or services. And finally, we have our financial projections. So again, this is important for everybody's, is for you, of when, how soon it's going to be for you to be profitable. If you've acquired an existing business, well, then you're going to have to pay, if unless you're paying cash up front for the business, then you're going to have to think about, okay, how long is it going to take for me to recoup what I've spent. Or if you've worked out some sort of an agreement with the seller that you're going to pay them back 50% up front, and then 50% in the second year, or some other structural financial agreement, you're going to have to put out projections and think through, okay, how much can I live off of as I've acquired this business, and how much of that cash is then going to have to be set aside to then pay for the previous owner, until it gets to the point where I've paid off the business, and then I can go ahead and reap the rest of that as either my own income or reinvestment into the business. But financial projections are going to be very important, and it all comes down to cash flow, which is a massive topic in and of itself that we can dive into in another episode.
I think also understanding, how the pricing is made up, with markup and margin, because a lot of people that we've talked to over the years have been employed and then decided to go on their own and start a business, but haven't had to look at the combination of the cost of materials, the time that it's actually going to take them to do the job, the profit margin that they want to make, the overheads that they've got with insurances and vehicle costs and fuel costs and staff costs and so on. All of those need to be factored into the ultimate price that you give to the client. And how do you do that? How do you put together this profit and loss, if you like, of the business, and then cascade that down into the pricing for each individual job that you are putting forward to your client, and still remain competitive in the marketplace? Because the temptation is that you want to cut your prices to undercut your competitor and grab the business that way. And that's not always the best thing to do. Market your business on price, because there's only one way to go, I'm afraid, in that situation.
Down. Yeah, exactly. In fact, you bring up a really good point. One of my clients, we did talk about this as a fact the last couple sessions ago. We did talk about, now they're in a specifically unique opportunity where it's just the two of them. They don't have a facility. They don't have any other staff. It's just the two of them. And they their pricing point can be lower than a lot of their competitors. Something that we talked about is you don't want to, it doesn't need to be a race to the bottom. So you don't want to necessarily be the lowest price because um, there's an opportunity for you to make more margin than the next person because your expenses are a lot less. Again, something else we can dive into another session. But yeah, you don't want to be on a race to the bottom in price because ultimately you're just going to end up, folding and not having enough margin in there in order to survive. But again, like it's a great topic for another episode.
I think one of the things that has concerned me when I've gone into one or two businesses that perhaps haven't been going in the ideal way that the people wanted to go was that they've done financial projections, but then they haven't reviewed it on a regular basis, and they've got this, as you mentioned about cash flow, has been, they haven't got enough. They're on paper they're making money, but they're just not getting the cash in to pay their bills in time, and so they're running out of cash, and their business is sort of imploding. So I think yes, it's a big area for discussion, and we'll cover it, I'm sure, in detail at some point.
Absolutely. Moving on, we are now an hour and 15 minutes into this, into our very first episode.
Wow.
Great topic. How long should it be?
Yeah.
So leading into the next slide. So how long really should your business plan be? Well, that's going to depend on a number of factors. What you're trying to do. Are you starting something from scratch? Are you is it a franchise that you're wanting to buy into? Again, acquiring another business. So though there's a number of different factors, are you going to need to look at getting a loan from a bank or from an investor, or is it self-funded, etc.? So it doesn't need to be 50 pages long. It can be, but you need to think about the audience, and the audience starts with you. If it's so large that you're not going to want to reread it, well, then other people aren't going to want to read it. So it's great to have all that detail, and maybe could be a version, a much larger, much more detailed version for you, and then you could look at having an abbreviated version for those that you hand out to the bank or to other investors. And then if they want more information, say, look, I have the same thing, but I have a much thicker version, and you can just read the sections that you're interested in, but it's much more detailed than the abbreviated version that I handed off to you. But again, it could just be as small as 5 to 10 pages that includes just enough detail for what you're wanting to do. You're going to be a street vendor, you don't need a 50-page plan. You're going to look at starting up something, a brand new technology. You're probably going to want, to have something a lot more detailed, because you're going to have to find some venture capitalists, bring in some serious money. And when people are going to invest large sums of money, they're going to want to see that you've really put a lot of thought into what your business is, why it's a good idea, who you're going to market to, why it's going to be successful, all these things.
I think it's fair to say that a lot of people that we've dealt with at the smaller end of the business startup side have not actually put together a business plan at all in their life. And certainly it's been said to me, when you look at the trades, as a business coach, many of those trades have said to me, look, we've gone through our apprenticeship, and then we've gone and worked for a company. We've then become a subcontractor, and now and all of those things are covered, if you like, through the work that we've done at college. But actually, college doesn't talk to us about what we should do to run a business. And so if you think about business coaching as doing more and extending your college work, if you like, and learning more about your craft, and running a business is part of your trade, then I think going into writing the plan is a great way of you self-searching, what you're really trying to do with your business. And I've found that people, when they've had support to go through it, have found it not only a useful exercise, but one that's helped them understand their business more fully.
Yep. And when you get into it, you could realize, oh, maybe there isn't necessarily something here, or it's going to be a lot more difficult than I anticipated, or, I'm not going to be able to turn a profit in the next 3 months. It's going to be more like 3 years. By doing
Yeah.
this exercise, you're going to be able to, the rubber's hitting. I don't say the rubber hitting the road because it's more of the actual doing, but you're putting your thoughts and ideas and your investigation, down on paper. It's written out. Math doesn't lie. So when you're doing the financial bit, doing that in Excel, and you're putting out the numbers, and you're like, okay, wow, there's a lot more expenses than I had anticipated. Oh, okay, so I'm really going to have to think of a new strategy about how I can pull those, make more profits sooner. That then may, feed into, okay, well, I've got to come up with a different marketing idea. Then you revisit that marketing idea, etc., until you're kind of happy with what you've got. So, who is the business plan for? We've kind of talked about this, haven't we, Paul, a little bit?
Yeah, we have. I mean, as I say, I think that in writing your first business plan, you're going to find out a lot more about what you're looking to get out of your business. And I think there's a lot of realization in the amount of work that needs to be done working on the business as well as in the business. So that's probably the primary thing for me, that you understand your business a lot better. Investors can be, it could be your family that are putting some money in. It could be yourself. It could be, you're going to the bank and asking for an overdraft. These people want to see that you not only are good at what service or product that you're making, but also that your business model. Now, a business model is just the things that you're going to do to make it a profitable business, and how that sort of pulls together. And that's expressed in a way of looking at the financial breakdown of what you charge for the product and the profitability that's within it, but also in the direction it's taking the business and the longevity. I mean, are you looking at building a business that's going to provide you with an income for life that's an above average salary, as it were, or are you actually building something that you want to then go on to acquire more businesses, grow the business to a much bigger than just a regional business, but into a national business? All these different things are going to be looked at. But the main thing really is that you've got down all the things that are the key areas of your business and how it's going to work, and you have some direction that you're taking it in, and that to somebody else that's reading it, that's going to have some form of interest, even if it's loaning you money, or they want to know that you've got the facility to be able to pay them back. Because at the end of the day, you can't just borrow it and not pay it back. And there's an interest rate associated with that. I mean, wouldn't that be nice? Oh, I suppose there is the bank of mum and dad, of course, and we're there at some point or another. But most lenders want their money back in the end with a return.
I think mom and dad
So,
generally would prefer to have their money back too, but yes, that's a whole other topic. But yeah, no, you're right. Go ahead.
No, it's just sort of summarizing that, is that really, first of all, get the business plan so that you are happy with what it says for yourself and you understand it, because you're the one that's going to be able to talk it through to whoever you want to buy into your business, so to speak. So if you want a partner in the business, you want an investor in the business, you want a loan for the business, then you have to be able to run it through verbatim, if you like, not just by reading it, but by living it. Show the people that you are passionate about what you're doing, and they'll buy into you, and they'll then buy into the business.
Absolutely. It's your business plan. It's your compass, and it keeps you grounded and aligned with your goals. It clarifies your vision and your mission. It breaks down your strategy into actionable steps that you need to take to start this business that you've got. One other thing you want to consider is that as coaches, we really encourage our clients to revisit their plans quarterly. It's not a one and done document. It evolves with the business over time.
Yeah, very much. I mean, as your business grows and you've got more people that are involved with the business, you may well have a business partner or people that sit on the board of directors, as you see it flourish. And these are times that you need to have a structure around meetings and things like the board meeting, and the business plan is something that really helps you keep yourself and everybody else within the business on track, and change it if necessary. It's, as you say, it's not a one-off thing, it's something that evolves.
Yeah, absolutely. And just hitting on investors, why it matters to investors, as we've talked about. They want to know, if your business is scalable, profitable, and is it worth the money that they're going to invest? They're looking for market opportunity and a competitive advantage, a clear revenue model, and a growth strategy. If I'm going to put in money into somebody's business, like we talked about, I want to, multiply my money. If I'm a private investor, I'm going to multiply my money. If I'm a bank, I just want my money back plus some interest. So, there's some of the things that as coaches we could suggest is, if you're an existing business, if you're a franchise, this is a lot easier. If you're starting out from scratch, have you started doing samples, and do you have any sample customers, testimonials, early sales, or partnerships? Something where you can demonstrate early momentum in your business that's persuasive to investors.
Yeah.
And again, for lenders, we kind of talked about that. You got your banks, your financial institutions, so kind of talked about those things. And then partners. If you're in a position, again, this can be law firms, dental practices, it could be a number of different things where you've got, partners where, there's one or more other people that are invested into a single business, and they'll bring either similar skills, again, dentists, orthodontists, etc., or it could be one person's a computer programmer, one person's an accountant, and one person's a marketing expert. Three of you band together, put in your sweat equity and your own money. The three of you have complementary but different skill sets, which can be very advantageous to a startup. So those are some things to think about and consider. But ultimately, you don't need a 50-page or 500-page document. A lean living plan, even a few pages, can guide decisions and attract support and keep you focused. So, as coaches, if you would like to help, receive some help in drafting, your business plan or refining your pitch deck, please let us know. That's what we're here for. All right. So we've talked about, 3 pathways to starting a business, the pros and cons of each of these. Before you start, think about those key considerations, who you should take advice from. We did talk about that. There's experts in the fields, again, franchising, business startups, so find those people that you can get good advice from, and not just from your from your high school or college friend. We discussed in thorough that a business plan is absolutely vital. Even if you're a small, just a single operation, it's good to have a business plan, even for yourself, whether you're going to be a medium-sized business or whether you're going to be starting something that's going to be culturally changing. Business plans are a good compass to help you navigate and get your business off on the right foot. And we talked about it doesn't need to be very long. Depends on what you want to do, how you're doing it. You're acquiring a bit of existing business. If it's a franchise, still create your own business plan. Even though you might be buying an existing franchise, it's still good to have that moral compass there to help you along your journey. Well, with that said, we're going to conclude our very first episode. So this was a fantastic conversation, Paul. I think we've covered quite a lot, and I've had a wonderful conversation, and I'm certainly looking forward to doing this again.
It was a bit of a marathon, wasn't it? It was.
Yeah,
it was great. I mean, look, I think the thing is that we're here. If people want to talk to us, come to the table. Let's have a chat and see whether we can help. We'll bring more of these chats and these thoughts as we go through our YouTube videos here.
Absolutely. So if you like what we're doing here, like and subscribe. By the way, we're Michael Lewis and Paul Murphy. We're business coaches, and here on the channel we discuss everything related to business. Whether you're a business owner or a leader, if you're into those topics or into these types of topics, be sure to like and subscribe and click the bell notification. It really helps the algorithm. This channel is about helping you. So if you have a business plan challenge that you need help with, or if you have suggestions for topics, let us know in the comments below, and we'll look to put them into the schedule. If you would like to find out more about how business coaching can help you and your business, head on over to the website, thecoachingtable.online. Send us a message, and we'll get in touch with you. Now, thank you very much for joining me today, Paul. And until next time, remember, you are your most important investment. We'll look forward to seeing you in the next episode.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.